the decisions moving forward, big ones, who do you think is going to pound their fist down on the table and say this is the way it's going to happen? Is it obviously Brad Treliving? Like it starts and stops there?
I think it's Brad Treliving, yes. And it starts and stops there, except there, I have no idea. I watched a bit of that presser over here live, and this is just guessing, not any sort of knowledge. There might be the occasional veto power available from Pelly or the board or someone very, high. I guess Pelly would be the guy if he said, if Brad Treliving came and said, we want to trade Austin Matthews, let's say, and it's the thing we're going to do, I could see occasionally on a really big thing that might be up for discussion and not completely end with Treliving. But I think for the most part, day-to-day hockey team management, roster construction, cap issues, contracts, that'll all be Tree and his group that will take care of that going forward.
Yeah, that's the hope. I mean, it's a weird kind of vibe here. I know you've been overseas for a couple of weeks, but you can imagine. I mean, with the way they went out in Game 7 and then the Shanahan news hanging over them, there's already a million reports about Marner and Tavares and what's going to happen on those fronts. I was saying earlier, Johnny, like it finally does actually feel different. Now, that can change quickly if they re-sign Marner or Tavares. It won't feel different at all. But, like, Shanahan not being here, even though he's been kind of pokeroo the last 5 years, like he's not been around, he never talks, you kind of understood he was still, the guy that was running the show. Like, it was still his operation. And if Marner does leave, I mean, that's outside of Matthews leaving, that's as tangible as it can get in terms of that change. Yet now you're dealing with a fork in the road, because if the era has come to an end, and yes, there was not enough success, nowhere close to it, hopefully it gets better. That's the plan. But it could get worse. Like, it could go the opposite way. And we may look back at this in a year or two or three and say, you know what, that was actually the end of an era, and now it's worse. Like now they're reverting backwards. And that's going to be very difficult for them to make sure they stay where they are, but even more so to get to that next level, because, I'm not sure they have the answers on how to do that right now.
Totally fair. Totally. I mean, they've been really good for a long time. And yes, the playoffs are another conversation we've had ad nauseum. But the idea that, if Marner leaves and Tavares doesn't come back, are they going to be would you say for sure, no matter what they do, they're going to be a 105-point team again? I don't know. I don't know what they become. Who do they spend the money on? How do they build their team going forward? Do they save money for the 2026 crop of free agents? Like, there's a lot of questions out there, and it may be one step back to hopefully take several steps forward. But that will be the intention, but that will not be the guarantee. It's not easy. Like, I always put it in golfer terms, right? It's a lot easier to go from a 20 handicap to a 7 than a 7 to a 3. Like, the early steps that the Leafs have taken are more doable, and they did them well. It's the final steps that are hardest to figure out, and they're going to try to figure it out again. But there's no guarantee, despite their best intentions, the same best intentions that have been going on here for a decade, that the team will be better in the regular season, that the team will be more successful in the postseason. They have smart people running it. They're going to try, Hayes, but I don't know with any sort of guarantee if Marner leaves, if they're going to be better next year. I just don't know.
Yeah, we don't have the answer to that. I mean, I think we're fairly certain Matthews, Nylander, Knies will be back up front. Obviously, a bunch of other players. You're not going to turn over everybody. There are going to be guys that return. And then, like we said earlier, like the 6 defensemen that played every night in the playoffs, they're all on term. They're all locked in, and the 2 goalies are locked in. So you have a
What about Morgan Riley, Hayes? What about Morgan Riley?
That's the one that sticks out to me, Johnny, is where does he come into play? Because I don't.
As simple, Brian, as he needs a change of scenery, man. Freshen it up. I don't know.
But he's got 5 years left at 7.5, a full no trade. That's not.
I get it.
It's not easy, man. It's not easy because he didn't help his value this year. Like, he just didn't. He didn't play well. He had the worst year of his career.
Right.
Yeah, and part of it, and listen, if Craig Berube is going to be there for 3 years, and if part of the dynamic this year for Morgan Riley was that the system of Craig Berube did not highlight his skills the way that Sheldon Keefe's system did, well, I don't think Craig Berube's system is going to change. So there is that dynamic. Is that maybe Morgan Riley hasn't fallen off, but just the system wasn't as ideally suited to him, and maybe you get into a team where it does, and he goes back to being a 50, 60-point guy. But this, again, a really hard conversation. I'm not trying to get Morgan Riley traded. I don't even want to start that rumor, but I think where the Leafs are right now is that they have to look at everything, including really hard stuff. And Morgan Riley has been like a really solid representative of the Toronto Maple Leafs on and off the ice. In many ways, he sort of is the senior leader voice, even more than Austin Matthews, on stuff when it comes up. But they're at the point like they got to do hard things, and if that means Tampa forcing Ryan McDonagh to get traded because otherwise we're going to waive you, or the Rangers getting Barkley good, like sometimes it's tough, and sometimes you got to do those things to try to get your team better.
Well, Johnny, do you think that Morgan Riley would be viewed different if he got some power play points? Because that obviously changed, right? We had Mark Giordano talking about that, where you get a lot of free points on the power play, and all of a sudden it looks different,
point,
right? The production looks different.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, you give him 15, 20 more assists that he would have picked up if he played power play one all year long.
Well,
and I don't know what he had in the regular season.
Then Calle Jarnkrok gets 20 more points. You can't, this is the thing.
Yeah.
I don't disagree, but he's not playing on the power play. They took him off of it. So everyone gets 20 more points, and everyone looks amazing. That's not reality.
But on a different team, he would play on the power play because he's played on the power play for the Toronto Maple Leafs when they have been the best or top 3 power play, top 5 power play in the league for 5 years in a row. He was a big part of it. So he's not just taking a guy who's never done it and say, okay, we'll concede. So I thought Calle Jarnkrok getting 8 more power play goals. It's a guy who's done it before, and maybe you could make the argument if he were to go somewhere else, you put him on the power play, you'll have a good power play, and he'll get you 55 points. And at 7.5 with the cap going up, that's a second pair guy. That's not a first pair guy at all anymore. $7.5 million.
Yep.
That's a second pair guy. And maybe having an offensive defenseman who's maybe not perfect defensively, you can stomach that for that amount of money in a different sort of environment.
Yeah, and that is valid about the contract. I mean, it's not – now it's term more than anything. He's got 5 years left, I believe. That's a lot of term. But the dollar amount, he is more than capable of playing to that number or exceeding it. And I do think there's be a concern if you try to move off him. You're moving off him after his worst season. I think he's got more in the tank than the way he played this year. I just – again.
And he was better with Carlo. Maybe a full year with Carlo at 5-on-5. Forget about the power play. Now, again, if you lose, and this is where you extrapolate it out, if you lose Marner, are you running 5 forwards next year?
Good question.
So if you're not, if your next best power play guy is not whoever, then maybe it's Morgan Riley again. And if you look at that decor, there is, I guess Oliver Ekman-Larsson, but there's not really anybody else who's going to run that power play if it's going to have to be a defenseman. So these